Hi everybody, welcome back to Geezer Rider. Quick reminder, if you like the content, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of these videos, hit subscribe and you'll have the channel so you can see all the content. If you hit the bell, you'll get email notification whenever a new video is posted. So today is the continuation of heated gear, specifically the follow-up to the footwear. So if you've already been watching these in sequential order, you got the overview, you got the intro to heated footwear and the options there, and then this is the intro to the Gerbing Heated Insoles. So we'll do a unboxing rather, and quick demo. So these are previous generation Gerbing Heated Insoles. They go inside your footwear, your boot, your sneaker, what have you. They are model Core Heat 12. You can make that out. There was a sticker over the model number, so it's a little hard to make out. Gerbing's been around quite a while. They've been kind of the go-to name in heated footwear for many years now. So they're a trusted brand, and we shouldn't have any problems. So it seems to be fairly well packaged. Obviously this is a little dated, coming off a little cheesy, but in general okay. There's an advisory on the bottom of the footwear not to cut beyond a certain distance. Obviously that's because that's where the microwire inserts are, which are the heating elements. So you can tell looking at the profile of this, it's pretty deep. So what you're going to want to do is take out the insole that's inside your footwear, your boot or your sneaker or whatever. If that's held down with adhesive or something from the factory, you might need a pair of pliers or needle nose or something to pry that out. And you want to put this in its place. If you cut it a little bit on the short side and it tends to slide around, you'll want to use some adhesive or do something to get it to adhere to the bottom of the footwear, so that, you know, when you get off the bike and you're walking around, you don't wind up with a blister. And as we talked about in the previous video, it's trim to fit, right? So you can see there's some guidance there on trim lines for different sizes. Generally, you're going to take the excess out of the toe region. You're probably not going to take it out of the back unless you need to take down this lip. I would tend to think it would fray and abrade a little bit if you took out of that. So I would try and get fitment first with this. Again, take off only as much as you need, because your next set of boots might be sized differently. They might come from a different manufacturer. You know, they may be domestic, they may be overseas. So who knows how they're going to fit. So you can always take more off. You can't put it back on, just like cutting wood. Measure twice, cut once. So that is getting it into the shoe and fit and mounted so it won't slide around. Again, if you take too much off, your toes are going to go over the ledge. If you don't take enough off and it turns up there after a day's walking, that raised area could lead to a blister. So here's one and two insoles come in the package. You get a left and a right, obviously. Instructions including amperage tables, size chart, some additional instructions for how to fit the footwear to your boot. I would take a few minutes to go over this. I haven't yet. I could have looked at it online, but chose to wait until I was sitting down with you guys. I won't sit here and read it and have you guys watch me go through everything. And as I talked about in the previous video, some pants still come with the power port coming out of the cuff. So you can transmit power down the pant leg through the stock pant leg, has the power in it, and then connect the heated insole directly to that. We talked about options for that, and the reasons we talked about options for that is because I chose a pant, heated pant that does not have that connector down on the cuff. So we're going to have to do something different. Gerbing already knows that that's a possibility. And included in the wiring kit that they give you are some extended cables that you can run down your pant leg if you have to. They're long enough. So this is a Y harness. Here's 2 leads. I'll pull a little bit out so you can see. Maybe one do the wire tie. So you have 2 into 1. So this is your power feed. This will go to your heat troller. Remember I told you the heat controller, the thermostat, the rheostat is commonly referred to as a heat troller for heated gear. Heated gear is the term used for heated motorcycle clothing. And then it splits out left and right. Doesn't matter which is left and right. Run it however you want because they both get the same feed. They give you some additional fuses should you start blowing fuses, and the fuses are for a direct battery couple. If you chose to plug directly in, your heat troller would plug into this, and these would go on your battery terminals. We're gonna go about this a different way. I have a different method that I'm going to use for powering the heat troller, or for powering the heated insoles, sorry. And we'll get into that in a second. So how would this work? So you have a power source. In this case, I've got a lithium-ion battery that I'm just going to use for testing purposes for right now. It's rated at output of 3 amps max. These have a 1.2 amp rating, so that's maximum heat. Honestly, guys, most of the people that I talk to, unless you're out in the Arctic on a snowmobile or something, or you don't have any wind protection at all, most people run the components of their heated gear. So the jacket, the gloves, the pants, the socks or the insoles on probably about the lowest setting. You're just trying to offset the cold, and unless you're under the most dire conditions, you know, you've got a headwind, you've got horrendous wind chill, you've got you know, very cold temperatures, and you're riding on a 70-mile-an-hour road, and maybe it's even raining a little bit or something like that. At lower temperatures, obviously that means ice or snow, but that's a different subject altogether. So there's 2 reasons not to overdo the temperature setting. One is it takes a while to cool down. Most of the jackets and the boots and everything are insulated, so once that heat builds up, it's going to take a little bit to cool down, and sweat is actually going to make you feel colder if you have air infiltration. You know, watching any of the Alaska shows on the you know, Discovery Channel or whatever, you'll see the guys chopping wood and they actually take their jacket off, even though it's, you know, 20 degrees out, 15 degrees out. The reason for that is they're trying not to sweat. Because if you sweat and you put back on your jacket, you're going to freeze. So anyway, enough about other channels. So what I have here is the heat controller that I'm considering using for this. And this is actually a very old vintage heat controller. This is probably about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old. It's from a pair of Tourmaster Synergy gloves. I'm not going to use it for the gloves. It actually mounts on the glove, and we'll cover the Tourmaster gloves in our glove segment. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this controller to power these insoles. I'm going to run the Y harness down the pant leg, and I'll probably put the heat troller around my hip, or maybe work it up through into one of the jacket pockets. There's a couple internal pass-throughs and such where I can put it in there where I won't keep bumping into it or have it bouncing around while I ride. And again, the reason I'm having to do that is because the pants that I got don't have the pass-through for the insoles. For example, if you buy battery-powered pants, other than, you know, the hybrid type that comes with the big lithium brick, where it can run on the 12 volts directly from your bike, or it can run on a battery. You know, if you get one of the 3.x volts or 7.x volts, it's not going to have the pass-through at the bottom of the cuff for connection to heated socks or heated insoles. So you're going to have to do the extended Y harness. So it's as simple as you might think. You've got one feed that goes down to the left, and we'll just use this for now, and obviously we will use a different Y harness. Put this on the right. This is power. We'll get this turned on. I have plugged in the heated insoles and had them running for a little bit. They are slowly warming up. Again, look at the construction. I think I used the term Dr. Scholl's before, and they're very much like that. So this is insulative material. The elements are nested inside, so it is going to take a while for the heat to come out of the insulated material and then get into your footwear and everything. So that being said, let's go ahead and address two things that I had overlooked in the previous discussion, including the overview, especially in regard to the insoles. So one of the other advantages of the socks that I didn't mention was the power port connector, where you plug the power into the sock, is obviously above your boot line for all but, you know, the tallest cowboy boots or something like that, or some really tall engineer boots or something. Because they come off the top of the cuff of the sock, and most of the time, some of them have a lead that runs up the side of the sock. So it's almost like the insole, where the wire comes up from, you know, the bottom of your foot up the inside of your ankle, like your instep. So again, unless you have really tall footwear, you know, that's easily in excess of 12 inches, it probably won't be a problem. As far as comfort is concerned, this was something that I looked at that I wasn't real thrilled about, having a wire run up the side of my leg. And the more I dug into it, the less it seemed like a problem, because honestly, a couple of the heated socks options have a couple of loops, and it goes up the back of the heel. I think that would be more obtrusive. Your calf is going to protrude to the back and everything. Your muscles, your calf muscles are up here, and this area is, you know, running along your shin and everything. There's a little bit more room there. So let's talk. We talked about fitment, trim to fit. I'm not going to cut these now, but we'll go ahead and we'll put them inside some footwear. I have an old pair of Icon low-cut boots, or riding shoes as it were, and we'll go ahead and stuff them in there. The inserts have been on probably about 3 or 4 minutes at this point, and again, I'm putting this in, and I haven't removed the insert from the footwear itself, the one that it came with. You're going to want to remove that insert and put these in its place. And honestly, I won't miss these inserts. They're not very well padded. They're hard as a brick bat. That'll be no problem. So right now I have this controller set on high. I think I mentioned previously that this is actually meant for some heated gloves, so it's not an ideal match for the heated footwear, but that's what we're going to use for the moment. Just a cheesy little test right here. I've got a digital meat thermometer. It's actually meant to be used for inserting into something to check the temperature rather than topical, like a laser, a non-contact monitor, IR monitor. But it'll give us a general idea what's going on. So right now we have an ambient temperature of about 71 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to lay it down on top of one of the footwear that's been running for a while, and it's slowly starting to increment up. This is an old thermometer, so it's going to take a while, but you can already see it's continuing to rise. So somewhere along the way, we're going to get to a temperature that is far above ambient and above 98.6, which is definitely not what your feet are going to be in the cold. And again, this is on high, so this is a little extreme. I mentioned earlier, we're not going to always run the gear on high. We'll probably, start off that way if you're cruising at highway speeds to begin with, so that your battery and your stator alternator are fully outputting, and then back it down to low before it gets too hot to stand it. But this is just going to continue to climb. I'm going to actually back it down to medium now. Keep my thumb off of there, keep my body heat off of it. So it's now down to medium. I think it's still climbing. I'm starting to feel the heat more uniformly distributed throughout the insole. Now that's been on about 5 minutes at this point. Yeah, here we are at 90 degrees already. So obviously that's going to keep your foot toasty warm under most conditions. And again, heat's going to rise from the bottom of the foot. This is going to be not cinched up tight to your foot, but close enough then not a whole lot of heat is going to escape. You're going to be pretty toasty warm. If you have it turned up too high, chances are you're going to be wishing that you had put it down lower. You might even turn it off till you can cool off. Again, what you don't want to do is you don't want to sweat. So I think it's easy enough to see that it's working. It's working reasonably well at, you know, just a mid-level setting. We're here at about the 90-degree range. If I was willing to stand here and let your paint dry a little bit longer, it would go even higher. So turn that off, and just sticking my hand inside the footwear cavity. There's obvious warm air in there. It's a nice cozy compartment, and obviously warmer than just like your hand in a glove. There's some auxiliary heat there. So, you know, take a look. This is what's going to happen. You know, this wire is going to come up the side of your boot. If this is a point of agitation for you, you're going to want to be cautious about any insole, because all the insoles operate this way, where the wire comes up the side. And certain socks also have the wire either running up the side or even more invasively running up the back. And I've seen that actually from some pretty well-known manufacturers in the heated gear arena. So again, do your research. You knowing you, and you knowing your bike and the capabilities of your bike as far as output and charging and everything are concerned is going to be key. And I'm going to review this item again in the overview. These are being recorded a little out of sequence, but we talked about the hardwired power that goes straight to your battery. Your terminals go to your positive and your negative, and then you have the power port to connect your heat troller into. And you can T off of that or Y off of that, however you like to call it, into multiple heat trollers, depending on the gauge of the wire. This is pretty good. I would guesstimate this is 14 or 16 gauge wire, so it should handle a pretty healthy draw from everything at once on low, or most of the things on low and one or two on high for a while. I think you're going to want to start off with the footwear on like a medium until you start feeling the heat, and then back it down to low. The other item is if you have a touring bike or you retrofitted what we called in the old days a cigarette lighter, sometimes they call it a power port now, a little more politically correct, you can get one of these and tap into that circuit. What you're going to want to do is look online or find a manual or something and see what that port is rated for. If it's actually rated for a cigarette lighter, that's, you know, a glowing red heating element that's almost to the point of combustion that can light a cigar or cigarette. That obviously has a lot of potential amperage, probably about 5 or 6 amps. You're not going to blow a fuse, but you're going to want to check it first and make sure that that's what it's rated for. This one from Synergy, this is the part number, has a nice little LED light on it to let you know you're actually getting power from the port. So if you blow the fuse, the LED went out, or the LED blew out. They don't go off bad too often, so chances are you blew a fuse. And that's not the end of the world. And again, as I told you, they gave you fuses for the hardwired connector, and you might be able to use them on the bike as well, depending on what kind of bike you have and the fuses they use. So this is another way to go if you have a power port. I've got a 2016 Electroglide, and it does have a lighter socket, what I'm going to just refer to as the cigarette lighter socket, on the fairing. I haven't looked up the rating yet. I'll check that out, and I'll try and include that in the later video. And I would imagine the other glides are like that as well. All you shark nose guys, we won't leave you out. And any other, you know, Goldwing, etc. But, you know, we just want to make sure that we don't cause any harm to the electrical system. So there's that. We'll take one last reading on medium just to get an idea of what's going on. Again, guys, if you like this segment, I'd appreciate you liking it, giving it a thumbs up. If you like the content and you want to see more of it, you can subscribe. We've got the heated insole. It's been running on medium for a while. Again, this controller is not a perfect match for running the insoles. It's meant for old Synergy gloves with steel wires inside for the, you know, micro heating elements. But that's okay. It has taken a while for the insole to warm up. I think I used the Dr. Scholl's analogy earlier on. And as you can see, there's a fair amount of material here. It's insulative. So that means the encapsulated heating element, it's going to take a while for the heat to come out of it. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It means it's not going to lose a lot of heat instantaneously if the foot does get cold for some reason, I don't know, wet or whatever. But it also means you have to plan ahead and think that you might want to start off on a high setting once you get rolling so that your battery's fully up and your stator alternator is putting out as much as it possibly can before you draw down. As mentioned before, and we're going to get into this, these are filmed a little bit out of sequence, so when we do the overview, we're going to talk about how some items might be run on high for a little bit in the beginning and then run low. Others you might just put on low and let them warm up over time as you roll along. I think the insoles are one of the things you're going to want to start off on high or medium as early as you can to start getting that warmth circulated. These have been on now for about 10 minutes. I can feel warmth pretty evenly distributed throughout. The heel region is a little thicker, so it's taking a little bit more time to feel warmth back there, but it is occurring. So I will tell you that the toe box, which is all the air, is going to be hitting you there unless you've got a full dress tour where your feet are completely blocked by some lower nacelle or lower plastic or leather block on your crash bar or something like that. But in general, the idea is that you're going to get more air down around the front of your foot and less on the back. And that's kind of the way the heat is distributed, which makes sense. I gently placed one of the liners inside an old Icon riding chute I have. That's kind of a crossover. It's half a boot, half a shoe. I didn't pull the liner out yet. I just put the insole in there for now. I'm not going to miss the liner. Honestly, these things were a disappointment. The insoles are hard as a rock. If you put in an orthopedic insert or something like that, I'm sure they'd be fine. But otherwise, you get off the bike and you're marching around a rally or an event or something, or doing some sightseeing. They're not good walking shoes. They're good riding shoes. They're very safe for that purpose. But I'd want to change another pair of shoes. But riding footwear is another segment. Let's continue talking about the heated gear, which is why we're on this segment. So one of the things I left out of the earlier comments and the overview for the heated foot gear in the earlier part of this segment is an advantage to the heated socks. So the heated socks generally will have a power port connection that's up at the top of the sock near the cuff. So that's either going to be this high or this high. And that's going to get you up out of your boot before you have any kind of obstruction. If you have real tall engineer boots or something like that, this might not come up all the way out of your boot, but I think in general, and as you can see compared to this piece of footwear here, it's plenty high enough out of there. There are a couple of the heated socks where the wire runs up either side or runs up the back before it comes out. So those are just obtrusive as far as the wire's concerned. It has to be, this isn't giant, but it's not a thin gauge because it's got to be able to put up with half of 1.2 amps, right? Which is what they're rated at as a pair. And you don't want it undergauged, so it's more efficient. But I originally thought this was going to be a problem for me until I looked at it. And if you think about it, if the wire's coming up the back, your heel's protruding back to the back of the foot or the back of the shoe, your calf muscle's up here, it's pushing back against the back of your pant leg or whatever. But this side of your shin area is a little bit more inset for most people. So this really isn't going to be that big a problem, have this wire come up out of here. And this is irregardless of whether you're connecting the power port to the bottom of a heated pant cuff or you're running an extension cable all the way up to your heat troller above your pant waistline. So again, these have been on for a little while. Ambient temperature here is in the low 70s. This is just a digital meat thermometer. It's not really, I don't have a IR contactless meter right now. This is really meant to be inserted into something to check the temperature, but it'll give us, a poor man's litmus test for the heat. So we got an ambient temperature. It looks like it bottomed out at about 71.9 degrees. We're on medium right now, so I'm going to just let this thing tick up a little bit just to show you it's working. And there we are, already at almost 73 degrees, and this will continue to rise. So what I'm trying to show you is this does not need to be set to high in order to give you sufficient heating to be comfortable. Remember that your foot is inside of this, it's laced up, it's closed, or you're slipped into your boot, you've got a sock on. There's not a lot of cold air infiltration except all the wind coming at the front of your foot. You know, unless you're protected by, you know, a full dress tour, or you've got a crash bar with one of those leather or vinyl barriers on the front to protect your foot from the wind. Most of the cold air is coming at your toe, and that's predominantly where the heat is on this thing, is up at the toe. There is heat, as I mentioned earlier, coming into the back into the heel region, but most of it's the toe. We've only had this sitting on here for about 30 seconds. It's already about 86 degrees, and it's continuing to rise. I'm not going to sit here and make you watch the thermometer and watch heat dry, just to give you an idea that, you know, it doesn't have to be blasting hot. Your body's still generating heat, creating heat. If you've got these, you probably have other heated gear on as well. Your core's not dropping too hard. It's not going to take much for you to feel comfortable. And that's the takeaway from this, right? You can do this without, you know, having to replace your battery every year, without having to upgrade your stator. But you do need to know the capabilities of your battery and your bike and your internal wiring before you go into this. So we're already up over 90 degrees. Obviously that's sufficient. Body's 98.6. You feel comfortable when you're at that temperature, so you don't need to really be any higher than that, because it's a combination of this and your body. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this back down to low. We'll just give this one push, drop that down to low temp, and let it sit. And as you can see, the wire comes up out of the inside of the ankle region of the boot. You may want to, again, pack different riding gear, you know, walking gear in your bag and change into this. If you're, you know, going to be off the bike and walking around for hours on end, you might not want to have to cart this around and wear all your heated gear. If you took the pants off for some reason but not the shoes, can't imagine why you do it, but think about it, you got this wire hanging out, and that's going to be true whether you have the sock or the insole. The other thing I neglected to mention in the previous part of this segment is we had talked about the power port connector, the source that's going to connect to the heat troll, the positive and negative terminal that go to your battery, and then you have the power port connector here. This is what they shipped with the insoles, and you're going to get this, some variety, some variation of this with any kind of heated gear you buy, other than the battery, rechargeable battery versions that are only battery. It's got a replaceable fuse. If you have a full dress tour, I got a 2016 Electric Glide, and it has what I still call the cigarette lighter port on it. Some people call it a power port. I haven't looked up the rating yet. I have to do that. I figure if it's capable of running a cigarette lighter, that's probably 5 or 6 amps. That's more than enough for all my heated gear on low. But I'm going to check, you know, online, check the manual, something, find out what the capacity of that is before I tax it. Otherwise, I might want to run, you know, a dedicated feed somewhere and come out, you know, under my seat or beside the tank or somewhere that I can easily get to and not tax that port too much. Synergy, who makes the gloves that we're going to review later. So we left off talking about the power adapter. I think I mistakenly said this was Gerbing. This was actually from Synergy. It's a Tourmaster line, but Gerbing and most of the other manufacturers have something similar. And these plugs are usually universal, but check the size before you order, both of what the device is you're ordering and your current gear, the power input for it. This is the Synergy part number if you're interested. And again, we have been reviewing the Gerbing Core Heat 12 heated insoles. I will probably do another review after the winter and spring riding season is over. There's usually a couple of spring rallies, or motorcycle events around here where the temperature's still pretty cold. And I'll get off and I'll do a little walking around on these, which is, the main reason that I got these, because I thought that they would be more conducive to walking around on. There's, obviously more cushion available here than a sock, but these do have to go in place of the insoles. For me, that works out well because I've never really been satisfied with the insoles in these old Icon boots that I have. They're not overly warm. They have a little bit of insulation in them. Obviously, they have some fabric on the sides that let a little air in, and that's something else I'll check on. So there may be yet one more segment on the insoles, just as a follow-up for wear, durability, functionality. But I think you have a general idea. And obviously, this was a lot of information on one part of the overall heated gear segment, the heated footwear. And the reason for that is, and I actually filmed these out of orders. I filmed this first because when I was doing my research looking into heated gear, and I've been reviewing heated gear for my own personal use for quite a while, there seems to be the least amount of information on it, especially about, what I consider something basic, like how the wire is routed out of the thing. Does it come up the instep? Does it come up the back of the heel? If it's a sock, does it come up the cuff like you would expect, or does it come up the back of the heel, even though they could have, run the heating elements up the side of the sock and got up out of your boot cuff? And you'll find that this same level of detail on the review for the pants and the jacket and the glove. But I think everybody that I've seen review this, it's kind of like an also-ran. I'm convinced that some manufacturer sites, or some dealer sites are almost convinced that you're not going to buy heated footwear. It's just completely underserved informationally. So I hope that this has given you a lot more to think about, and that you watch all the videos before you select any piece of your heated gear, because what you're really going to wind up with over time is a system. You're going to have the jacket, you're going to have the gloves, you're going to have the pants, and you're going to have the heated footwear. And we've talked ad nauseum about the power draw and everything. So look for the other videos on Geezer Rider here for those items that I just mentioned. I've made it a point in a couple of the prior videos to mention that I don't see the level of detail that I was looking for when making heated gear purchases. So we're endeavoring to give that to you. Good content, obviously kind of low rent production values. I apologize if this is a little cluttered, maybe a little difficult to make out, but you'll understand what we're doing here in just a moment. What I have is just a standard car battery here for a 12-volt supply. It's only going to deliver what's drawn off of it, so it's really equivalent to, a modern motorcycle battery. I've got a cheapy multimeter from Harbor Freight. You can get these things for free with a coupon sometimes with or without a purchase, either way. A couple of connectors, and what I've done is put this in line to the return side or negative side of the battery. So we've talked about the power connector a number of times. Here it is. It's going in, it's feeding a heat controller. A heat controller is connected to, in this case, the heated insoles on both sides. So what we're looking for is, the manufacturer said, hey, these things draw about 1.2 volts on high heat. They're assuming that you're going to use their heat controller. In this case, we're using a different heat controller, actually meant for an old pair of gloves, but just giving you an idea of the draw. So again, nothing too fancy, just put it in line, basic electrical hookup for current reading. So here is our heat controller, here is our reading. We're currently at 0 amps. We're going to turn it on. It defaults to high. It's drawing 1.15 amps. Manufacturer says about 1.2. That may be because this controller isn't the one they're expecting you to use, but it's not in excess of the draw anticipated, so that's good. One more to medium, we drop down to 0.5 amps, and again the low, 0.58. Not a whole lot of difference between medium and low, 0.85, 0.5, or half an amp. So the purpose of this is just to show you the value of buying a quality heated garment that can deliver the heat you need, drawing the least amount of current possible. Because remember, this is all cumulative. This is all going back to the battery and your charging system. So if you're not able to get the heat that you need for the conditions that you normally ride in for less than the high setting, and the high setting is drawing in excess of an amp, and your total load is 3 amps on your charging system, that's not a lot of wiggle room for something with a lot more heating elements like a jacket or pants, and then add gloves to that. So what we'll do is we'll do a summary of the individual components. I'm put together the series as an overview of all the different types of gear, jacket, gloves, pants, and footwear. And then we're reviewing specific items like the specific Gerbing insoles, and we're going to do a amperage draw test on each of them. See if we can get that to light up. And we will also do an amperage draw on the entire system, or at least for each heat controller. And I'll get into why I say that in a little bit more. So I hope you're finding this information useful. Please comment and let me know. Like it if you like it. Subscribe if you want to see more of it. Take care. Ride safe. Namaste.